While it may seem like our government's #1 priority is keeping America safe from terrorism, truth is, in many ways, it's dropping the ball. Sure, when it comes to Islamic terrorism, we have dozens of eyes surveying every little piece of intelligence and agents all over the world tracking Muslims. But when it comes to homegrown domestic terrorism, it seems like nobody at the Department of Homeland Security knows what the heck is going on. That's because since 2009, DHS has taken a hacksaw to its own intelligence agency, cutting out the guys who specialized in looking for domestic terror threats and focusing solely on Islamic terror. In fact, there hasn't been a detailed report on the threat of homegrown terrorism in 3 years from DHS. That's despite the fact that a new Department of Homeland Security study conducted last year on the 86 major foiled or executed terrorist attacks in the United States between 1999 and 2009 found that the majority of those attacks were not affiliated at all with Al-Qaeda or any allied groups. And non-governmental groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center are saying that the threat of domestic terror is higher today than it's been in the last few decades. In just this last year, numerous terror threats have emerged from non-Muslims. An American neo-Nazi was arrested for trying to blow up an MLK Day parade. 6 members of an Alaskan militia group were arrested for plotting to kill police officers. And a Wisconsin lone wolf was arrested for trying to kill Planned Parenthood workers. And that's just to name a few. So why is the Department of Homeland Security missing this glaring threat to America? Here to offer some answers on this issue is Mark Potok, Director of the Intelligence Project at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Mark, welcome back.
Well, thanks so much for having me again.
Mark, what happened in 2009? Why did the Department of Homeland Security suddenly turn a blind eye to domestic terror? And to extend that, did they actually do that, or did they just stop talking about it?
Well, here's what happened. In April 2009, the department, after several months earlier putting out a report on left-wing extremism, which is barely existent, but in the interest of appearing even-handed, they came out with a report on right-wing extremism and said their findings were very similar to our own independent findings. Essentially, what the department said, or what this report said, was the radical right was growing explosively, that this was due largely to the election of a black president and the collapsing economy. And it went on to point out several things. It said, for instance, one of the dangers comes from single-issue extremists concerned with issues like abortion and immigration. It also mentioned in passing that extremists, this is certainly true, our own research has shown this as well, that extremists were interested in recruiting returning war veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq, the thought being that these are men who have, very high-end paramilitary skills.
This is what Tim McVeigh was. He was a returning war veteran from the first Gulf War.
That's right, in effect. But he wasn't recruited. I mean, these guys are looking to find people with the skills, presumably, to fight the coming race war, et cetera, et cetera. In any event, this report was meant for law enforcement agencies all around the country. It was a confidential report, but it was immediately leaked. And what happened was that almost instantaneously, the political right, the American Legion, Michelle Malkin, the columnist, Pete Hoekstra, the congressman, any number of other people on the political right, attacked the report, saying that it painted all veterans, all people opposed to high levels of immigration or to abortion, in effect, all conservatives in this country as potential Timothy McVeighs. Now, having read the report at the time, that is ludicrous. The report was carefully written. It's simply false that it demonized these groups. But in any event, this was the picture that was presented, with a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth by the political right. And what happened was that Secretary Napolitano, the DHS secretary, defended the report for a few days, and then basically completely backtracked. It was a bad report. It had gone through the authorized channels and been approved. It was essentially a rogue document that had been released, and she repudiated it. She actually made a big apology to the American Legion. And in my own view, what really occurred was that the department simply was frightened off by the criticism of the baseless criticism of the political right. And ultimately what occurred, and this we just put out, I think, a very explosive Q&A with the former top domestic terrorism or non-Islamic domestic terrorism analyst at DHS, a man named Daryl Johnson, who said what happened was the department essentially imploded. His team of 6 analysts is now a single person. They have, as you said, have not put out a single substantive report since April of 2009. And, you know, after Daryl went public with these comments, you know, he's gotten dozens of messages from other people in the law enforcement field saying, you're absolutely right. It's a shame what's happening out there. The Washington Post did, I think, a very important story on Daryl, in which the Post reporter called all around the country and talked to many other people who had been in the analysis section of DHS. He talked to people at the so-called fusion centers. There are 72 of these centers around the country that are state, local, and federal law enforcement cooperating on these kinds of intelligence issues. You know, and many of the people out in the fusion centers said, you know, it's a disaster what's happening. So you're right. I mean, what you said in the intro is essentially right. So this due to political pressure.
This is not a matter of DHS just saying, you know, okay, Glenn Beck, you know, we're not going to, you know, because he and Fox seem to be leading the charge. It's not a matter of they're just saying that they're backing. They actually did back off. The flip side of this is the media, and I saw this report today about how the Drudge Report is resembling a white power website, and it was pointed out by the white power website. In the minute we have left, Mark, tell us about this.
Well, we wrote a blog item on this. I mean, this is a group called the Council of Conservative Citizens, you know, a group that has described black people as a retrograde species of humanity, saying, my goodness, look at the Drudge Report, looks just like our headlines. And indeed, that is the case. You know, I don't find that terribly surprising. I mean, Drudge seems to move ever further to the right. And, you know, essentially they're the kind of, you know, black people are criminal savages motif. That's what you see.
But crime right now in the United States is at a 40-year low. But
I'm sorry, what's at a 40-year low?
The crime in the United States.
Sure.
And yet they're still,
I mean, look,
they're still trying to scare us.
These are all, yeah, these are all stereotypical scares, right? You know, big black men are coming for your daughter. I mean, that's essentially the tone of the thing. And Drudge seems to have picked up in a rather hearty way that tone.
And no coincidence that it has to do with, has anybody noticed there's a black guy in the White House? It's Mark Potok, and great research you're doing on this at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Thanks so much for being with us.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for having me.